This is notice to record. Hello, welcome to our final reading of Light Verse in Dark Times. I'm delighted to see a lot of you back and some new faces. This will not be our last reading sponsored by Light. We'll be taking a break though. Among other things, we're planning to do some readings to herald our summer issue when that comes out. We hope to do some other readings too. This has been so much fun. But we recognize that now that the weather's getting back, a lot of people have things they would rather do perhaps occasionally on a Sunday afternoon than sit in front of their computer.
No.
I'm getting, no. Well, some people seem to want to get outdoors. So anyway, but we will be back with more readings. I'm going to start in, just for those of you who haven't been here before, I will be muting everyone when the reader is reading, and then you will get a message saying, I've requested to unmute you. Please click yes, so that then the person who just read can hear your wild applause. But in the meantime, when you're muted, be sure to show them how hard you're laughing, shake a lot, that kind of thing. All right, so I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to introduce our first reader, Brian, that will be you, and so you're going to have to accept my invitation to unmute you, or just unmute yourself, even while I'm introducing you, that would be fine. Okay, muting everyone. So our first reader is Brian Allgar. Brian was born in 1943, a mere 22 months before Hitler committed suicide, although no causal connection between the two events has ever been established. Despite being immutably English, he has lived in Paris since 1982, and that's where he is today. He started entering humorous competitions in 1967, but took a 35-year break, finally re-emerging in 2011 as a kind of Rip Van Winkle of the literary competition world. He also drinks malt whiskey and writes music, which may explain his fondness for Mendelssohn's Scottish Symphony. He is the author of The A to Z, a bestiary of mostly alien beings. And Brian, welcome. Please go ahead and unmute and take it away when you're ready.
Good afternoon or good evening to everyone. I was asked to stick to humorous verse for this reading, but in view of the gravity of present circumstances, I felt obliged to start on a serious note. So here is a piece about an overweight, puffy-faced, yellow-haired, mendacious politician. You are old, Father Boris, the young man said, and I hear that you've been very ill. I'm glad to observe that you're out of your bed, but shouldn't you be in it still? Stuff and nonsense, cried Boris. I'm not at all old, and what's more, I have never been fitter. This virus, I'm told, is no worse than a cold. Or so they assured me on Twitter. As PM, said the youth of this plague-stricken land, social distancing isn't your forte. You wandered around shaking everyone's hand. Don't you think it was reckless and naughty? Utter bosh, snorted Boris. I challenge your claim. Need I tell you there's no vaccination? To achieve herd immunity, that was my aim, by infecting the whole population. That, of course, was Boris Johnson, Britain's very own wannabe Donald Trump impersonator. It would be disrespectful to move on without a few heartfelt tributes to the real thing. First, a riddle. Who am I? I'm childish and rude, narcissistic, vindictive, and crude. My perfect IQ's the same size as my shoes. Here's a clue. I am bright orange hued. Next, lying still. How low can the president sink? Is there nothing from which he will shrink? All his statements are lies, which includes, no surprise, any sentence beginning, I think. And finally, a piece rather indelicately called VPPP. Arriving in hell, Trump laments, this hotel isn't worth 20 cents. Where's the sweet golden showers I got in Trump Towers? The devil replies, here's Mike Pence. Passing from the hugely sublime to the utterly ridiculous, here are two pieces from my book, The A to Z. The Hercule is a happy beast who strikes endearing poses. He has 3 heads, a dozen eyes, and 6 assorted noses. His furry tongue is 5 feet long, the color of tobacco, but when it's stretched, can almost reach the constellation Draco. He's fond of children, adults too, and sings to them divinely. He helps old ladies cross the street and pats their heads benignly. His dress is somewhat dandyish, bewigged, befrocked, and bodiced. His eating habits usually are admirably modest. But after dieting for Lent, grown ravenously thinner, he'll gladly munch your kids for lunch and gobble you for dinner. The Farfaloo lives in a rickety shack with a roof that lets in all the rain. So he washes his clothes while they're still on his back, and the neighbors believe he's insane, for he dries them by leaping to twice his own height till he's puffing and panting and pink. But sometimes his trousers seem awfully tight, and he wonders if rain makes them shrink. He keeps an umbrella to hand in the cellar, in case it should rain underground, for there is his treasure, a pearl beyond measure, which has to be kept safe and sound. He takes it down nightly and locks it up tightly, secured by a padlock, then padlocks the door with a chain. If burglars came calling, it would be appalling to lose his detachable brain. To end with, a piece that may strike a chord with any gardeners who are here today. We think that we know what a weed is. It's wild, it's a nuisance, a pest. It comes out of nowhere, determined to grow where we've planted the rarest and best. All gardeners know of the villains like bindweed and other such horrors that ruin our labors by strangling their neighbors, behavior as foul as Gomorrah's. But other plants too have their vices. Does sin pre-exist in the seed? And one that is spread to a neighboring bed, we may rightly consider a weed. Now, where did those violets come from? I'd never have planted them there. They're pretty enough, but invasive and rough, and they're seeding themselves everywhere. The geraniums keep misbehaving. The blue ones, it seems, disappear, while those sugar pink blighters that failed to delight us proliferate year after year. And as for our blue periwinkles, the profligate reprobate vinca, wherever I look, they have filled every nook, growing stragglier, wilder, and pinker. Campanulas, too, are a nightmare. We planted a small group of 3. First a pool, then a river, and now, with a shiver, I stare at a limitless sea. These marauders, these trespassing beauties, have become an unstoppable bevy. Though my verse may be light, it's a sobering sight. My heart, I assure you, is heavy. Cheers, everybody.
Hey.
Despite practicing with no problems, it's the first time I've
Sorry.
Maybe you guys should go outside for an hour. Want to? He would like it. He could sit on the bench a little, or you have to take all the stuff, I know.
Hang on. Some people are now unmuted. Brian, I'm so sorry. You were muted and you were trying to say one last thing. Please come back.
No, I was just saying that despite all my rehearsals and repetitions, it's the first time it's taken me 3 goes to say the word unstoppable.
Well, it is a mouthful. But thank you so much for that reading. And I have to say, I'm feeling weed envy, though. You have a much better class of weeds than I have here. So congratulations. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. Our next reader, technically, is R.S. Gwynn. Sam Gwynn lives in Beaumont, Texas. He retired from Lamar University in 2016, and his most recent collection of poetry is Dog Watch from Measure Press. And he has a Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and look up R.S. Gwynn, Gwynn, poet, all one word, you will find his author page there. However, even though Sam is listening in today, he was having some technical difficulties, and so he has found an excellent proxy to read for him, and that will be Luke Stromberg. And Luke is an accomplished poet also. His poems and prose have appeared in Smartish Pace, Goladad Review, the Hopkins Review, the New Criterion, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Raintown Review, Think Journal, and several other venues. He works as an adjunct English instructor at Eastern University and LaSalle University, and serves as the associate poetry editor of eVerse Radio. Luke, before you begin, I'm going to request, I think some people are still unmuted who aren't reading currently. So if you're still unmuted, please go ahead and mute yourself. Meanwhile, Luke, please unmute yourself.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not Sam Gwynn. So I hope I'm going to do his poetry justice. If I don't, it's my fault and not the poem's fault. I thought about reading the poems in Sam's voice, but I do as you could hear, I do a terrible impression. So I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry, Sam. Yeah. So every poem that I'm going to read is from his book, Dog Watch, from Measure Press. And if you don't have it, shame on you. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Equity. The lions they threw to the Christians to torment and torture and eat. The man who is asking the questions that forced the contestant to cheat. The corpse who brought tears to the mourner. The socks that wore holes in the shoes. The Nazi who turned the wrong corner and harshly was treated by Jews. The white folks who loved Alabama and wept at each racist demand. The thumb that was under the hammer that pounded the nail in the hand. The fork that cried, "Fondle me, fat man." The bottoms that paid for the tops. The criminals badgered by Batman till they turned him in to the cops. The losers who gave us the winners. The gun that was fouled by the shot. The saints overwhelmed by the sinners deserve the comeuppance they got. And this next poem, Sailing to Byzantium by William Butler Yeats. This is Cruising to Byzantium. And it has an epigraph. 6 nights on the Med with 60s greats. And that's from a radio ad. There is no venue for young men. The old in one another's arms, gumming their lips, the overfed and nearly dead who sold siding or stocks, now board their cake-tiered ships to meet the slow swells which have always rolled, rocking and rolling like those spousal hips, rolling past midnight to the sensual beat of 60 sounds danced to on aching feet. An aged man is a substantial thing whose waistline yearly claims a larger size. One puts his hands together now to sing a chorus with the rascals, but his eyes lock on the long buffet where waiters bring boiled shrimp, crab claws, and the Kamal surprise, mussels and garlic butter, which shall come in endless number. Ah, Byzantium. No sages standing in God's holy fire, just Gary Puckett and his backup band, splendid in floodlights and LeMay attire, playing young girl while the old girls command their husbands to the floor to pern and gyre, the night away, still 5 full nights from land. Many male feet are crying out in pain, yet Gary's asked to sing Young Girl again. Once down the gangplank, they will quail and quake at local vendors hawking souvenirs in such shrill voices as will likely make a permanent impression on their ears. A golden bird? Why not? Something to take back to the grandkids who, in later years, will shake their heads at chipped enameling, wondering who'd pay for such a paltry thing. And finally, this is Ballad of Manly Prayers. The surefire fix from the roll of tape, the age-defying bond of glue, the pitless plum, the skinless grape, the all-transcending winged shoe, safe passage in meandering through the labyrinth to slay the bull, the seer who says he always knew. May these be granted us in full. The purchase on the perfect nape with fulsome pleasures in plain view, the tunnel and the clean escape, the France from Stalag 32, the toast of Paris with a few whose deference imprisonable shall stick them in a slavish crew. May these be granted us in full. Completion in an ovoid shape, old orders yielding to the new, the fluent scripture-quoting ape who'll cure whatever's ailing you, the power source that speeds us to the blessed bounds where skin and skull are made forever nice and new. May these be granted us in full. Prince, grant us leisure to pursue the fleet and unattainable, the gifts that are our rightful due. May these be granted us in full. Thank you.
Yay!
Great poem, Sam.
Thank you so much, Sam, by way of Luke. You didn't do his voice, but his voice came through, and thank you so much for that. And thanks for putting your heads together about choice of poems and all that. Our next reader, coming from West Lynn, Oregon, is David Hedges. David has placed rhymed and metered poems in Poetry, Measure, Poet Lore, and others. His latest book, Prospects of Life After Birth, Memoir in Poetry and Prose, appeared in 2019. He revived the moribund Oregon Poetry Association serves on the Oregon Cultural Heritage Commission, co-founded the Oregon Poetry Collection at the University of Oregon's Knight Library, and received the Stuart H. Holbrook Literary Legacy Award from Literary Arts, Inc. for his outstanding contributions to the state's literary life. The Oregon League of Conservation Voters dubbed him an environmental warrior for his successful efforts to protect sensitive lands from development. His website, a work in progress, is david.hedges.name. And David, welcome. I'm requesting to unmute you.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, and I'm muting myself now.
Oh, okay. Thank you for this opportunity. This has been said before, but putting names and faces together, and I've known the names and the poems. It's been such a pleasure and I thank you, Melissa and Kevin. And I'm going to start off with a poem that was the first one that Light Quarterly accepted. And I tried and finally the light came on, and I sent in a batch, and all four of them were taken. So I said, oh, okay. And I haven't looked back. This is Dances with Marketeers. I pick up the phone, excuse me. I pick up the phone and there's nobody there. I know I'm about to be hustled by somebody paid to shamefacedly care if I had a nice day or tussled. A click in my ear, then a phlegmatic voice recites what's been drummed in by trainers. The icebreaker followed by one of a choice assortment of hackneyed no-brainers. Insurance or timeshare or luxury cruise. I sharpen the quips in my quiver. I start up by saying I'm drowning in booze and cirrhosis is eating my liver. The bankers who found me to be in arrears foreclose on my mortgage tomorrow. You say there's no interest, no fees for 5 years, no end to how much I can borrow? Of course I would love to cut costs to the nub. I jump at the chance to pinch pennies. But would I fit in at an exercise club? I can't afford gym shorts or pennies. 3 days at a fat farmer, just what I need. Massages and saunas work wonders. Keep bandages handy, my bed sores may bleed. And diapers to cover my blunders. I can't wait to sail on your luxury cruise. 6 days in the sunny Bahamas. The ladies will love my erotic tattoos. I sleepwalk without my pajamas. Insurance to round out my meager estate. It's something I've thought about buying. 6 million sounds perfect. Your timing is great. My doctor just told me I'm dying. This is another one that was in light, and this is a really light poem, but something about it I like. Age appropriate. I wonder where I could be heading. My kids are all grown up and gone. My life is more funeral than wedding, less Vegas and more forest lawn. They laughed when I sat down to play, with a wink and a nod to Victor Borge. They laughed when I sat down to play, my tails tucked up between my legs. I looked hard at the lewd array, the way a homeless beggar begs with soulful and remorseful sighs. 3,000 gleeful eyeballs popped at what appeared between my thighs. To pass the time before it dropped, I joined the great erection watch. The 1,500 straight-laced souls who brought attention to my crotch cracked up like Anasazi bowls. Their inhibitions unrestrained. Some ruptured with a mighty roar. Before their reservoirs were drained, I turned attention to the score. Like spiders tidying their strings, my fingers stroked the ivories. I watched the tail end titterings through eyes submerged in salty seas. Primed for rhapsodic intercourse, the swell recumbent in the trough, I launched Rachmaninoff with force enough to knock their socks off. Stockings off, sorry. Oh, anyway, this is a poem of the week poem that I don't know. I just loved the minute I read this. South African lions eat poacher, leaving just his head on BBC News. I had to write this. A trophy fit for a king. A poacher set out with the aim of dispatching South African game. With his Nitro Express, he was primed for success and a shoo-in for fortune and fame. The lions he happened to meet were delighted and made haste to eat both his lip-smacking haunch and his succulent paunch, not to mention his hands and his feet. The lions heard voices and fled without taking the late poacher's head. Their intent? To come back, mount his head on a plaque, or display on the wall of their den. And one that's actually in the current issue, but it also appeared earlier in Light Quarterly, and it's one that I just love because it's all one breath and it was written just as quickly. Hog Tied. If I had a dime for every time some dumb schlemiel behind the wheel of an SUV cut in front of me and then went slow, I'd be rolling in dough. And another one, thanks to BBC News. Cotswold flasher bitten by dog. That was the headline. Nobody saw the flasher prowling Cotswold streets like a thief. Short and slim, said Sergeant Dowling, himself a side of beef. According to the victim, bless her, the bloke had bluey brown eyes, was what she dubbed a crack undresser, trousers to his thighs. The victim, bless her, carried a terrier, growl, and the bloke was bitten. Most likely next time he'll be warier. And that's the news from Great Britain. I'm going to close with the shortest poem I ever wrote. I'm going to really set out to make an epic out of this. And it's called The Texas School Board Tackles Geography. The world is flat, and that is that. Thank you.
Bravo.
David, thank you so much. It's a delight to finally hear you read. Been looking forward to that, and to hear poems both from Light's earlier years and much more recently. Thank you so much. Our next reader is coming to us live from England. Jayne Osborn used to teach math, English, and poetry in a men's prison. So lucky for her today, she is used to having a captive audience. She's had poems published in The Spectator, The Oldie, and many anthologies and online publications. And just as impressively to me, she is the only woman in a magician's club in Northamptonshire, England, where she performs magic tricks in between reading her poems to audiences. I don't believe Jayne is planning on any sleight of hand today, but I can promise you that she'll be pulling plenty of amazing words out of her hat. And Jayne, welcome. And you need to unmute.
Oh, yes.
One more time.
One more time. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Right. My first poem was in Light back in 2014. I think I was Poet of the Week, also Poem of the Week, and it's called Putting My Affairs in Order. A friend has told me I should do this just in case I die. I've thought about it quite a lot, but still can't reason why there is a need. She seemed insistent, so I'll have a try. I've cast my mind back years. My first affair was with Joe Green. He liked to make love in the open, but I wasn't keen. Al fresco sex is not for me. What happens if you're seen? The next one was a chap called Stan. Now, Stan was 4'10". Although he was quite nice, I really do like taller men. And after several dates, I thought, I won't see him again. I think that number 3 was, wait a minute, it was Bob. He knew which buttons he should press, but wouldn't get a job. And so he had to go. The man was just a total slob. Hang on, I might have got it wrong, and Bob was number 4. Or was it Charlie, Bruce, or Steve? I really can't be sure. This putting them in order business really is a chore. My next affair, where am I? Up to 7. Oh yes, Jim, a famous politician, so that name's a pseudonym. He told me lies. Yes, really. So I very soon dumped him. Before, or was it after that, came Billy on a cruise. I don't remember much except we sank a lot of booze. He'd moan and sweat excessively when taking off his shoes. Let's see, I hope I got it right. Joe, Stan, Bob, Charlie, Bruce, then Steve and Jim and Billy. Quite a few, but my excuse is that I'm rather gullible and easy to seduce. Although I've done the sequence, my dramatis personae, I still don't need to see the need to write this down before I die. When one's affairs are all in order, who do you notify? Thank you. Speaking of jobs, I loved my job in the teaching in the prison, but it made me think there are some jobs that are not so nice, that wouldn't appeal to me as much, one of which I'm going to tell you about. So this poem is called Vile and Hell. Why would you want to mess with people's feet when there are far more pleasant jobs to do? Chiropody is just not up my street. Bunions, corns, verrucas are complete anathema to me. Don't have a clue why you would want to mess with people's feet. Okay, the treatments make things nice and neat. That doesn't change the way I feel. It's true, chiropody is just not up my street. Yuck. Athlete's foot and fungal nails. I'd beat the hastiest retreat if I were you. Why do you want to mess with people's feet? Ingrowing toenails, calluses, I'd greet with utmost horror. Guess I always knew chiropody was just not up my street. A load of sweaty, stinking plates of meat to deal with for a living? No thanks. Phew, why would you want to? Mess with people's feet? Chiropody is so not up my street. There was a little bit of Cockney rhyming slang at the end of that one. Plates of meat is feet, like mince pie is their eyes. The next poem, we had a lot of politicians, and the phrase named and shamed, came into being. And so this poem is called Named and Ashamed. I've recently acquired a little fame. Don't get me wrong though, I'm not one to boast. But now that lots more people know my name, I eagerly await each morning's post. Final demands and junk today, blow those. But there was one nice letter on the mat, informing me they'd grown a brand new rose and named it after me. Imagine that. I'd never felt so proud and highly flattered. My spirits soared, self-doubt began to fade. Forget the bills, as they no longer mattered in light of this fantastic accolade. They'd sent a catalogue. I read the blurb, but after that I wasn't so impressed. I thought I'd be described like quite superb. This specimen will outdo all the rest. But not so. Tough and sturdy is what it said, with fusty scent. My mood began to fall, and then not recommended in a bed, more suitable to pin against a wall. I've got just two more. So the penultimate one is a joke. My book is called Only Joking, and a lot of the poems in it are jokes that have been reworked into rhyme, and this was one such. So you may have heard the joke. It's called Rub It Better. I love playing around. I mean playing around. I'm talking about the golf course. And the other day I took a great swing and I hit the ball with such force that a man on the links fell down screaming with pain, and he clutched at his groin with both hands. I should have been keeping my eye on the ball, but you can't always gauge where it lands. I rushed up beside him and said, "I'm so sorry. I'm a nurse. Let me see what I've done." I pulled both his hands away from his groin and then got his trousers undone. I massaged him gently. His screams turned to smiles. I thought, phew, that's a decent outcome. "There, is that better?" I soothingly asked. "Oh, it's lovely, but what you hit was my thumb." So my last one is one of those scenarios we might all have experienced with children or grandchildren, where they say something and drop you right in it. So this is called Out of the Mouths of Babes. Little Nell was permitted to stay up late for the dinner party that night. She felt very grown up and thought it was great. It took a long time deciding which dress would be right. She chose her blue taffeta. All the guests cooed, "Oh, look at her, isn't she sweet?" What they wanted to say, but it would have been rude, was, "Go away, little brat, while we eat." But everybody sat down to a fabulous feast, and Mamma's little darling had pride of place. The overindulged and precocious young beast was then asked by Mamma if she'd like to say grace. Well, she loved to show off, but little Nell was struck dumb. She hadn't a clue what to say. Mamma was embarrassed, but smiled and said, "Come, just repeat what Papa said at lunchtime today." What had he said? Oh, yes. Nell gave a nod, and with all of the sweetness within her, clasped her small hands together and piped up, "Oh, God, must we have those damned people to dinner?" Thank you very much.
Bravo!
Glenn,
Jayne, thank you so much for that. I suppose now it's a little late, but I should mention that this reading is not intended for children. Thank you, that was a treat. Our next reader is Bob Schechter. Bob published poems fairly often in Light in its print years as Light Quarterly, and continues to publish sometimes in Light online. But he now writes mostly children's poetry. His children's poems have appeared in Highlights, Cricket, Spider, Ladybug, and the Caterpillar. Yes, he's got all the bugs, as well as in various anthologies and in an educational textbook published by Hook Mifflin that is used by millions school children throughout the country. On the adult side of the ledger, he was the winner of the 2016 XJ Kennedy Parody Award, as well as the co-winner of the 2020 Willis Barnstone Translation Prize. And his light verse has been published many times in the Washington Post and the Spectator humor competitions. He has one child, or two if you count his sourdough starter. And Bob, please go ahead and unmute yourself, or if you're having trouble with that, I can try to do it. One more time.
Now?
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, I'm going to start with 3 parodies. And first one is called Archaic Torso of Barbie, with apologies to Rilke. We cannot know the famous plastic face in which her eyes once swiveled. Still, we find her headless body's not exactly blind, but seems to peek out from the flimsy lace in which some girl once dressed her. It's a fact, or else her bosom's bump would have no charm, and you would not harumph with such alarm to see the parts her nether regions lacked. Or else you would not find it so aesthetic to contemplate what plainly is synthetic, as if it were a creature that is real, with all a living creature's woes and joys. Or else you would not see her sex appeal. She's winking at you. You must change your toys. The next one's apologies go to Theodore Rothke. It's a poem called The Crossing, obviously based on his The Waking. And as many of my poems are, it's in the voice of a chicken explaining why it crossed the road. I cross the street and try not to be slow. I am a chicken with a chicken's fear. The farmer ate my mother. Time to go. We live by running. What is there to know? They seized my mom and cut her ear to ear. I cross the street and try not to be slow. Of those who guard the hen house, which are you? God bless the ground. I shall run swiftly there. The farmer ate my mother. Time to go. We yearn to flee, but who can tell us how? The lowly worm and I make quite a pair. I cross the street and try not to be slow. Great nature has another thing to do to you and me, but slaughter is not fair. The farmer ate my mother. Time to go. This running makes me nervous. I should know. What roasts my skin is always and is near. I cross the street and try not to be slow. The farmer ate my mother. Time to go. And my third, I guess you'd call it a parody. It's based upon Kipling's If. If you can read that poem by Rudyard Kipling, in which he showers pearls upon his son tendentiously, and though you are not tippling, grow drunk upon his words until they're done, then start at the beginning and reread it while keeping in perspective time and place. And though its tone annoys you, still concede it speaks the truth with elegance and grace. If you can read his words, mutatis mutandis, and still believe that they were meant for you, that girls as well as boys should understand this, because though they're bombastic, they are true. If reading Kipling's If can make you happy, while all about you everyone's distraughter, you'll find there's never been a prouder pappy than I, whose loins engendered such a daughter. And now we're through with the parodies, and the next poem is an Oviejo. I was hoping that Rena would be here, since she is the one who taught us all at Eratosphere some years back what an Oviejo is. Those of you who don't know, it's the second, fourth, and sixth line all combine into the final line, which is the eighth line. Lately, I've been told I'm old and other depressing stuff. Enough, you need not tell me so. To know that I have lost the glow of youth, of course, is sad. Whatever you would add, I'm old enough to know. And here's a limerick on a similar, related subject anyway. I am bald now, though once I was curly. I'm old and I'm weak, but not surly. The source of my cheer? With each passing year, it's clear it's too late to die early. The next poem may be a children's poem. I'm not sure. It's the only one of this group that I would say that about. I'm an unlucky fella, there is no doubt. I bought an umbrella. We had a drought. I bought a hanky. My nose didn't run. I bought a franc, then lost my bun. I bought a spare tire and got no flat. I bought a ball, then broke my bat. I bought a coffin. It's worth a try. With my bad luck, I might not die. And here are two quick Bible stories. God spake loudly, let there be, and sure enough, there was. This doesn't work for you and me, but when you're God, it does. For looking back, when God said no, Lot's wife deserved God's odium. Yet some believe God went too far when he turned her into sodium. And finally, here's some Clarius that appeared in Light Online recently. Thank you, Melissa, for publishing them. Ishmael received fish mail, but he knew it was a trick when they claimed they could lengthen his Moby Dick. Lot was not sad his wife looked back. He saw it as an opportunity for her to become a pillar of the community. Isaiah used to say a sword can be beaten into a plowshare, but exactly how that can come about, I wish he would now share. Robinson Crusoe, wistfully regarding his unpacked trousseau, said, I'm approaching do or die day. If I'm not rescued Thursday, I'll marry Friday. Noah wanted to leave behind the boa, but God made the rules and wouldn't be contradicted, so Noah's options were constricted. Abraham said, Lord, I am happy to do your bidding, no bother. Isaac said, Lord, can I have a new father? Bob Dylan put on tefillin to demand answers from God, then grinned when God said, Zimmerman, have you checked with the wind? And the last one is James Bond was famously fond of martinis that had been shaken and not stirred, though he couldn't really tell the difference after his third. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Bob. That was thoroughly entertaining. And I want to take this opportunity to, some people have throughout this, thanked me and thanked managing editor Kevin Durkin for publishing this or that. And I want to remind you all that we have some other editors on board at Light, and I'd love to give them a shout out, especially since at least one of them is here. No, two of them are here. Julie Kane, Gail White, and Allison Joseph all also read quite a number of submissions for us, and so thank you to them for all of their hard work. We have our next reader ready to go, Wendy Sloan. Practiced labor and civil rights law with the firm of Hall and Sloan before returning to poetry. Her first collection is Sunday Mornings at the Cafe Mediterranean from Kelsey Books 2016. Wendy Sloan's poems and Italian translations have appeared in journals and in the anthologies, the Able Muse translation issue, the Best of the Raintown Review, the Great American Wise Ass Poetry Anthology, Love Affairs at the Villa Nell, and Poems for a Liminal Age, which benefited Médecins Sans Frontières UK. She has been a finalist in the Howard Nemeroff Sonnet Award competition, and several of her poems have been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Wendy lives in New York City, where she co-hosts the Carmine Street Metrics Poetry Reading Series, which I and a number of people present can vouch for as a delightful series, and which is likely to move to Zoom this fall. So Wendy, welcome, and please take it away.
Hi, thanks. You can hear me and see me and everything? Okay, great. Oh, thanks, Melissa, really, for initiating this. It really has been a real pleasure the last few dark months to see everyone, however virtually, and get a few laughs and admire the poetry. So this first poem actually was one of my first rejections. I got a rejection letter from John Mella, the distinguished editor of the online Light Quarterly, and it said, I really like this poem, would love to publish it, but I'm afraid our readership would be offended by the blue words. So I think the readership has changed, and you may not recognize the blue word in this poem, but wait for it, as they say. Email from New York to an almost grown-up daughter away on vacation. Things fell apart soon after you left town. The super from your building called to say that there was water leaking 4 floors down from your apartment. That friend you let stay forgot to turn the faucet all the way. The building also had a role to play. They'd shut the water off, then brought it back without much notice. Although your friend's lack of common sense is rather hard to take, well, anyway, this isn't an attack. It was an accident, a dumb mistake. Shit happens. Really, no one was to blame. We're taking care of your insurance claim. Actually, the insurance paid so well that the guy in the apartment under ours renovated his whole place and put it on the market and moved out. I think I made quite a good profit on that. So this poem actually does have a lot of blue words. It's to Sebastian Horsley. Some of you may remember him, especially Brian and Jayne. He was a British artist, very flamboyant lifestyle. He once had himself crucified in the Philippines. And he passed away a couple years after this incident, which was in 2008. He published his memoirs, Dandy in the Underworld, and tried to come to the US on a publicity tour, but was put on a plane back to England pretty quickly. He didn't make it out of Newark Airport. So here's to Sebastian Horsley, and there's an epigraph. British memoirist is denied US entry. Author of memoir detailing life of rampant drug use and encounters with prostitutes, detained 8 hours at Newark Airport. That's from the New York Times, March 20th, 2008. Suck, prick, cunt, dick, piss, screw. Did they fuck you, poor Horsley, dandy of the underworld? The Brits may love your book, but don't intrude upon our shores with moral turpitude, because, old boy, you swore it was all true. Well, more or less. Whatever line you drew between pure fact and fancy, rather blurred as your lascivious storyline unfurled, one luscious lump of lewd depravity, as well befits your hip high art CV. But Horsley, my good man, hadn't you heard Rule 1 derived from Philip Roth, too true? When drafting that salacious plot depiction, take care to bear in mind why God made fiction. Yay. And this poem, this is another New York poem. It's called The West Side Broker Story. So think the Sharks and the Jets. West Side Broker Story. They called this place Hell's Kitchen years ago. It seethed with winos, rats, and switchblade rumbles. All high-rise condos now. You'd never know they called this place Hell's Kitchen years ago. And Midtown West is far more apropos to lure a client only Midas humbles. They called this place Hell's Kitchen years ago. It seethed with winos, rats, and switchblade rumbles. That actually was published in Light. So, and this last one takes place in a restaurant. Remember restaurants? Restaurants, yeah, they crowded places where you sit on top of other people and watch the world go by. I used to love to eat lunch out in New York because, you know, you could run around the city all day and not come home and stop for lunch somewhere. And anyway, this was one of those experiences. Size 4. To the lady invariably seated on my left at lunch. Yeah, right. A salad. Well, I should have known this place got girls pared down to skin and bone. Now, while I've polished off a full-course meal, you're still content to munch that lemon peel hung on your water glass. Take some more sips. No love handles obscure those skinny hips. They're sharp as salsa. Girl, you've got some edge. Splurge on another cut cucumber wedge. Do I indulge too much? I'm halfway through dessert. You've taken all that time to chew up one tomato. Hey, give me a break. Your vanity is just too hard to take. Still, I find solace thinking of the dread your man feels when it's time to climb in bed. All right, thanks. And thank you. Good seeing you all. And I hope to see you in the fall when Carmine Street Metrics moves into the cloud or wherever we are.
I hope so too, Wendy. I hope the series on Zoom will be well attended. And thank you so much for that reading. Yeah, I miss restaurants too. Although I think that person seated next to you must be more like a size 0 with vanity sizing. You know how everything's getting like smaller and smaller and
smaller.
Anyway, thank you so much. Our next and final reader for today is Catherine Tufariello. Catherine is the author of 2 chapbooks. I'm sorry, I have to make sure everyone is muted. And then Catherine, you'll need to unmute yourself. I will, yeah, I think you can do that without my doing anything on your behalf. But if you have trouble, let me know. Catherine Tufariello is the author of 2 chapbooks, Free Time, published by Robert Allgar, and Enunciations, published by Aurelia Press. Her first full-length book, Keeping My Name, won the Poets Prize and was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. Since those heady days, Catherine has busied herself by earning a BS in nursing, and she will complete a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling this August. In the meantime, she has continued to write, publishing most recently in Literary Matters. Her second book manuscript, The Second Story, has been recommended for publication numerous times by her husband, her daughter, and 2 of her 3 cats. At this point, even her Wikipedia page concludes, "Come on, Catherine, just submit the damn manuscript." And Catherine, welcome. I hope that you are, yes, you're successfully unmuted, so please take it away.
Thanks, Melissa, for that introduction and for inviting me to be part of this. And also I want to thank my husband, Jeremy Tellman, for his contributions to the bio, since my writer's block has also been taking the form of having trouble writing bios. So thanks, Jeremy. I am going to start with a theme that's come up numerous times in the last few weeks. I'll do that by beginning with a cheese poem. I believe it was Leslie Mansour who said a couple of weeks ago that every self-respecting poet has to have at least one cheese poem. And this one was inspired by a great many, it had the same source as a great many contemporary cheese poems, which was a contest in The Spectator. The prompt for this contest read, G.K. Chesterton has observed, the poets have been mysteriously silent on the subject of cheese. You are invited to disprove this assertion, maximum 16 lines. The length limit was helpful to me in writing this poem because when you're channeling Whitman, which is what I decided to do, you are inclined to go on if you do not have a length limit in front of you. So I'm not gonna ask for a show of hands, but I'm hoping I have some Whitman fans here, even though I realize we're all metrical poets. But I love Whitman, and so this is in honor of him. It's called Song of the Cheese. I sing of processed American cheese, the glory of these states, factories sliced and shredded by white-aproned workers, clean and strong. But I do not decline to feast also on the cheeses of Europe. See me at the reception, hovering over the hors d'oeuvres, consuming a great wheel of cheddar, golden and glowing as the sun, making short work of the snowy rinded brie, gobbling up every crumb of the Morbier and its layer of smoky ash, devouring the blue mold of Roquefort and Gouda with its crimson wax. In vain does soft camembert run in the heat to escape me. In vain does a wedge of stinking bishop brandish its bristling name. In vain does ripe Limburger assault my nose with its stench of sweaty feet. In vain does the remotest iota of fermented milk in the vast wheeled universe conceal itself on a darkened moon or the bottom shelf of a locked up larder, or in a protective crust of puff pastry. I find I incorporate all are part of me. Out of them all, I press the cheese of myself. That was first runner-up in that contest, and I like to think that maybe if the Brits had been a little more familiar with Whitman, it could have been a contender, as they say. The next, here's a little one, a tailgater that Melissa took for Light on Line. It's called The Raven Abridged. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary, I found 6 exterminators near you that list birds, said Siri. In this next one, the name of the addressee has been changed, but the name of my high school sadly has not. That is accurate. It's called On a Fourth Friend Request. Dan Harrington, I don't remember you. I see you went to Sweet Home High School too, and graduated in 1981. So when I got your first request, for fun, I dug the yearbook out. Your photo stirred no shred of recognition, not a word exchanged between us 40 years ago, which isn't so surprising since, you know, there were 600 students in our class. At least you weren't a memorable ass. So I perused your profile page. A scan revealed that you're a staunch Republican, conservative, who went to the Citadel and studied civil engineering. Tell me, why are you so keen to be my friend? No, don't. It doesn't matter. Why pretend long lost strangers are friends is the real question. Be careful what you ask. That's my suggestion. Think harder. Do you really want to see my status updates quoting poetry? Your interests are investing, golf, and shooting. Why bother so persistently recruiting the likes of me who's never held a gun or played around or traded stock? someone who's bored by sports and finance, and at that, a flaming, bleeding-hearted Democrat. Do you want to know my bleeding heart is warm with thoughts of single-payer health reform? Your profile photo shows you've kept your hair. You've got a boat, a condo in Bel Air. 2 kids, 1 of each, a smiling wife, no doubt a group of golfing buddies. Life is short, and your friend list is very long already. Have some dignity, be strong. Write me off and find real friends. It's for your good as well as mine. I click ignore. And this last one was occasioned by a vacation my husband and I took in North Carolina some years ago. We stayed in a B&B near Asheville, and it prominently displayed publicity materials for a nearby wildlife preserve. And the tagline on these brochures was bound to be irresistible to my husband, who loves all species of cats. What he doesn't love are sentimental love poems, which he refers to as icky. Yet he wanted a love poem. So this is my attempt for Jeremy at a non-icky love poem. It's called On Not Being Stalked by a Mountain Lion. Be stalked by a mountain lion, said the brochure. But we were not stalked, although for a lazy hour along the path we strolled and talked. Totally helpless, as you pointed out, pitifully clueless, meant for lion prey, apart from the fence and the ditch too broad to leap, even for mountain lions. You scanned the sway and shadow play of branches for a glimpse of that quicksilver shape. Oh, the rising unease, the chills, the chase, the last minute, hair's breadth escape. He's probably sleeping, the gate attendant shrugged, when you complained no icy green gold gaze had pricked our necks. Later, it rained, and we drove back and chased each other into bed and slept an hour or 2. There was nothing boring about not being stalked by a mountain lion with you. Thank you.
Catherine, thank you so much for that reading. Not only was the love poem not icky, none of them were icky, and it was a delight hearing you. And all of you readers, in the Light newsletter this past week, I paraphrased Dana Joy to ask, can funny poetry matter? And I'm not so deluded as to think that funny poems can cure what ails this country right now. But thanks to your readings and the many assurances of those of you who have attended, I am confident that it has mattered to the group that has attended these readings. And I don't know about you, but it has helped give me the energy to keep going and to keep hoping for better times, and to keep trying to help create better times. I hope the same is true for at least some of you. And I thank you so much for coming today and all the other times. For those of you who don't know, we now have a YouTube channel. And so if you look up Light Poetry Magazine on YouTube, we've been posting all of the readings from this series. And today's will be posted as well. For those of you who have read, don't neglect the chat. Take a look at, before you leave today, to see what people have been saying to you. If you miss it, let me know. I'm downloading the chat and I can send you the compliments that people have sent your way. So again, thank you. I'm going to unmute everybody if people would like to visit for a little bit before you depart. And here we go.
Okay. Great reading, everybody.